Safe and sound at home again. Let the waters roar, Jack. Safe and sound at home again. Let the waters roar, Jack. Long we've tossed on the rolling main. Now we're safe ashore, Jack. Don't forget your old shipmate. Folly, rolly, 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 ride-o.
Hello, I'm Andy Tierney, and welcome to Cohasset Political Society's Open Forum. Today I'm joined by John Keenan, Jack Fector, Marcus Rowland, and Niels Erlandson. Now, on November 8th, Americans went out and voted for the presidential election, but voters here in Massachusetts voted for 4 distinct ballot questions. The first of which was about allowing Massachusetts to issue another gambling license. The people of Massachusetts have voted no on this one. What is your take on this, Marcus?
Not surprising in any way. We consistently vote against these types of questions.
Yeah, this was probably the least surprising ballot question. I mean, it was going to be no the whole way. I mean, a lot of people are against gambling and the whole gambling industry.
You know, I didn't think it was going to be passed. I wanted it to be passed as a libertarian, as it were. But yeah, I think I was pretty disappointed. I thought they would be able to get a little bit closer to 50%. I figured they were going to lose, but I didn't think they were going to lose by that wide of a margin.
To me, the question seemed quite vague, and given our history of voting against casino bills, it comes as no surprise to me. Although this is the one thing in politics I really didn't care about.
Well, was the question really that vague? It was, can Massachusetts issue a gambling license in this specific spot that would benefit pretty much this specific company?
I mean, it was unnecessary. We already have passed a bill allowing the United States government to give permission to open casinos.
Okay, well, that seems like a general consensus on this issue. The second question was about charter schools. It asked Massachusetts ballot voters, would you be open to opening 12 new charter schools in Massachusetts? The answer on this one was another no, but Cohasset voters voted yes on this question. John, I'll leave that to you.
Well, I think I would have voted yes on it if I could vote. I think that more schools, the merrier. Having more schools would create more competition between them, and thus the laws of competition, where the more choices that people have, the better the schools come as a result, because they'll be competing for students.
Not necessarily. In this bill did not offer any additional funding. So basically, we're going to open all of these extra schools out of our existing pool of resources, making things worse than the other schools we have.
Yeah, this is probably the one time I'd actually agree with Niels here. I do think that when you open charter schools and you give kids in low performing districts the option to leave and go to a different school, it does make the quality of schools does drop, because if all of the kids who would normally be at the top of the class are leaving, then the school performs worse, and then therefore they get less funding, and it's a downward spiral.
I would disagree with that, because from my knowledge I know that schools receive their funding based on how many students they have. So it's not like there would be an increase in students, it's just that the students are going to different schools at different times. So the schools would still receive the same amount of money if no one went to the charter school, but if some kids did, then they would lose it, which wouldn't be that big of a deal, because then they wouldn't have those students to teach.
I think that this is just I think charter schools are just an example of they're just trying to put away the problem instead of fixing the problem, which is the underperforming schools, or underperforming schools. And instead of actually trying to fix the schools, they're just giving kids an out to go to a better school rather than actually fixing the real issue.
May I also add, charter schools can choose who they want to accept and who they want to decline. The reason why charter schools have such stellar ratings and why so many smart kids are coming out of charter schools is because those smart kids are going into charter schools and coming out of the public school system. The public school system are left with the students that did not meet the charter school's expectations, and we're just leaving them there.
It's like Harvard, where they produce intellectuals because they only accept intellectuals.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not actually fixing the problem.
Well, how would you fix the problem in an ideal world, Jack?
That's
Unlimited spending.
Yes, actually,
Unlimited
in an
money
ideal
would be
world,
nice,
yeah.
But has unlimited or has increased spending fixed the problem in the past?
Not necessarily, but they could.
No, it couldn't.
well,
That would just cause schools to become even more inefficient because they have the money to do that.
I always find that the government chooses the option of throwing more money at a problem.
it's because it's easier.
Yeah.
But the more money a school has doesn't necessarily mean the
But
better
it
it's going
doesn't
to
fix
perform.
anything. It's like pouring water into a bowl with a giant crack at the bottom. It's just going to keep pouring out. You need to go down to the level of the schools and fix it there.
Well, I feel like if you had unlimited money and then you had someone that could actually orchestrate where that money should then be spent, it would resolve the problem.
But we don't have unlimited money.
That is a good.
And it's already orchestrated by the Department of Education, so
Yeah.
That is not necessarily a perfectly organized system.
you would fix the Department of Education.
I would fix the Department of Education before I created more charter schools.
Interesting.
I would also throw out there that I would remove Common Core because I think that is a huge.
It works well within the
God, I'm
state, not
agreeing
across
with-
the nation.
Yeah,
Oh
I
God,
think-
I'm agreeing with John.
I think if communities were able to decide what they think is more important.
I feel like it works well across the state, but not across national boundaries.
I don't think it does because Common Core wasn't even designed by teachers. It was just designed by this group of shadowy figures who,
Shadowy.
Yeah.
You picked the word shadowy.
yeah,
The Shadow Council.
yeah. But you know what I
Shadowy
mean. That
people
they're
like Bill
people who
Gates.
have nothing to do with education, who just thought that this was the best that they could do. And the two advisors that were on the council that actually taught in education both said that this would not work. So I think if you are going to have a national standard, then it should be designed by teachers and professors in their field. And
I don't think a national standard works because there
Well, I'm
are
just-
states
I'm
that
just-
have better
yeah, I'm just
standards
saying
than others
that
already.
Not all students
If
are
you
the
wanted to
same
go that
or
route.
excel
Yeah, I'm
in the
not all
same
for,
areas.
like federal education degrees. I think I agree with Marcus that like each state should decide
Yeah.
what its education wants to do and like what curricula it wants to set.
Well, it's worked well for Massachusetts, and unsurprisingly, the students of Cohasset Public High School voted a resounding no on question 2.
It's not surprising.
That's not
Now,
We're in a well-to-do district
That
with
we
a
are.
very good.
We go to a
public
public high
school.
school.
Yeah.
that
Why would we vote for charter
Exactly.
schools?
the third question was about animal rights. It asked voters if they wanted to ban the confinement of animals in tight spaces while they grow up.
I think
I think John expressed sentiments that he was against this proposal.
Yeah, I was against it because I didn't really see the need for it. I thought that if enough people wanted to get meat or animals that were like buy the meat from animals that were grown in open pastures, then the market would take care of that. And because if enough people stop buying this meat that was grown in these tight spaces, then those people would go out of business. People who met their customers' expectations would come in and pick up on the market, and I didn't see why a law needed to be made.
I think that this is the people not necessarily wanting. It's them wanting to have like equal like rights for how a chicken grows up. Basically, it's not necessarily
chicken.
how.
I think that this question.
So
was,
do you
like,
hate chickens, John? Like,
Such
isn't it like the
Are
little?
you saying that a chicken is equal to a human?
No, but I'm saying that a chicken should have that shouldn't be grown up in a cage and.
I think that this
Abused.
question was like kind of emotionally baiting. Personally, initially I was for it, but
Definitely.
then I'm against it. I think it was trying to emotionally bait people, and you're saying, oh, the poor animals in the cages. But if you like read deeper into it, it's actually what it would do is, it would like get rid of the like the small farmers, and it would consolidate farms into like bigger, more industrial sized farms, because the smaller farmers would not be able to like support it. They'd be losing money, like when it was passed. So they'd have to like go out of business or change their business style and lose business to like bigger agricultural.
Well, how much agriculture do we even have in the state at this point?
We actually have a lot in
Yeah,
Western Mass.
we do.
Yeah, Western
Oh,
Mass is
really?
huge.
Yeah.
And also, all it's going to do is raise meat prices up even more,
Well,
so that
won't it
low-income
force
families-
prices to fall because everyone will have to meet the same standards?
No,
No.
that's
No,
not how it works.
that's not how it
It's
works.
I'm sorry, Marcus.
No,
That's not how it works
it's
at all.
not.
Everyone has to increase spending.
There is the argument that like confining animals in those spaces helps breed superviruses.
Mhm.
Do you have anything to say about that, John? Because obviously that might be a public health concern.
Well, I would say that if, let's say, a supervirus does break out, we are in one of the most medically advanced nations on the planet, and also the chances of them even breaking out are minuscule. It's like 1 in a billion trillion. I don't think it's really likely, considering we've been doing it for the
Where do you
past-
get that statistic? 1 in a billion trillion.
No, I'm just throwing out there. It's unlikely. That's what I'm trying to say. We've been raising animals like this for thousands of years, and I don't.
Well, we haven't.
Well,
raised-
Not thousands. I meant
I'll-
since
I'll-
industrial nation.
I'll take
It's
this.
the
one.
Neolithic.
Since
Neolithic
industrialization,
revolution.
my
Since
bad.
industrialization, but since industrialization, we've had increased outbreaks of cholera, of
Yeah.
typhus, and it comes from these sort of animals. And maybe you disagree with me. Maybe you think that this sort of raising of animals is an economic necessity. But I guess that's more of Marcus and Niels' purview to argue for this proposal.
When
Well-
does this bill even go into effect? I heard it doesn't like for
2020.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's a
I
while.
think it's more of a moral argument.
If
than anything.
If you ask me, I'd say the idea of a superbug being bred by confinement of animals to be preposterous, but it does increase the likelihood of diseases, not world-killing plagues, just day-to-day diseases being spread.
Superbugs are created when these animals are fed antibiotics to keep them from having diseases when the meat gets packaged and sent off to the supermarket where we eat it. And then obviously the excessive antibiotic use is what causes is what helps bacteria develop antibiotic resistance, and that is what creates superbugs.
And then they're more likely to just spread in confined
But
areas.
also,
and
you have
those-
to understand that when these viruses did break out, there was no hygiene at all. People were living in their own filth, pretty much. So there's a greater likelihood now. I'd say that people are generally clean, certainly above the standard of when these viruses were breaking out.
And Ambi, you said that the antibiotics are what cause the superbugs.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the
The
spread
use
of
of
them,
antibiotics.
the
use of
spread,
antibiotics,
and
but
the use of
how
antibiotics
packed
is-
they are doesn't affect
they would
that.
only
It affects
the viruses would only
when,
spread
when
quicker
one
in a
animal
confined area.
gets a virus, they all get the virus.
Yeah.
Yes, which happens quicker in a
which spreads
smaller
the virus,
area
and
if they're
it's why the
contained.
antibiotics are a necessary function when you're raising animals in those conditions.
In which case, that would be logical for a farm owner to spread out their animals. So it shouldn't need to be a proposal in
Yeah,
our-
but it's more expensive, and people aren't willing to do that out of their
Well,
own will.
there'll
I am
always be a
arguing.
demand for cheaper foods, which is why those farmers will continue to confine people. So we have to force the market to.
Chicken,
Yeah, and
not people.
harkening back.
Well, people confining their animals.
Well, harkening back to John's point about the people don't have to buy it if they don't want to. Companies aren't obligated to say how they keep their animals.
Then you can make them obligated to say how they treat their animals on the package, which wouldn't affect the people who didn't care about how their chickens were raised, and it would give the people who wanted to see that the chance to see that.
Yeah, I think this question was I think a lot of people in America are concerned about the food industry. There's a whole bunch of documentaries about how processed foods and the
Food
rise
Inc.
of industrial agriculture with corn. I think the whole I do think this argument for the proposal was pretty much just emotional. They were trying to get at people and say oh, help the animals, but people need to take a deeper look and understand what it would actually do.
Interesting. So, the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's get a drum roll going. Okay. The fourth question proposed to Massachusetts voters was, should Massachusetts legalize small amounts of recreational marijuana for those over 21 years of older? Massachusetts voted yes. Cohasset Public High School also voted yes.
I
know
feel
that
like
we
voted
have
no.
discussed this.
It
in
is
the
very
past.
likely that the latter was a joke.
yeah, that
The
was
town,
a joke.
Yes, our
The
town
t-
voted no.
I'm not surprised.
Are
by that.
you talking about the school
The
election?
school
the
voting
town.
yes was a joke.
The school voted yes, but the town, as the adult population, voted no. Marcus, do you think that the town meeting will do it, or the town selectmen will do anything to try and confound this?
I don't know, to be honest, like at this point,
I
because I
think-
wasn't expecting this to pass at all within the state.
I think that our selectmen won't allow a marijuana dispenser to be built in the town. I think that's as far as they would go. I don't think they'll restrict anything more than the state standard is, but, yeah.
And the thing about this bill is that it legalizes it for over the age of 21, and the majority of people who smoke pot are under the age of 21.
I think the fault in this ruling is we didn't ask ourselves how we were going to legalize it. Do we have infrastructure
Yes.
for this? Do we have a way to tell if someone's been operating under influence? Because residue from THC stays on a person for weeks after use. How do you catch people
I
who
think
are
they're,
acting recklessly?
Right
with
now, I think they're
marijuana?
testing a new, it's almost like a breathalyzer, but for like THC levels. I think they're like testing. I heard something about how they were like maybe gonna roll it out when it was being implemented to like judge driving, because I do think accidents are gonna go up after
Most
December
definitely.
15th.
It's nothing that we should really hedge our bets on because it's in testing. It's not yet. We don't know that it's going to work.
But the
And
bill
if
might
it
be
doesn't,
delayed.
we're stuck with legalized marijuana and no way to control it.
But
What-
December 15th isn't like the final day. Like it might be delayed a couple months to go and like revisit it and
Well-
maybe like alter.
Was that legally binding? That
I believe it
poll?
was.
All of them are.
all of them are. Okay.
But I think that, back to your infrastructure point, I think there is an infrastructure in base. We already have medical marijuana.
Medical marijuana and
We already-
recreational marijuana.
Yeah,
could-
Yeah,
Very
I'm
different
saying-
things.
Very,
no,
very
they're
different,
But
John.
I'm saying that we've dealt with this in the past, and I think that we could, quickly transfer, as it were, over the medical marijuana dispensaries to also carrying recreational. But to your point of rising of the THC levels and how we don't have anything to test it, see what the person has. I think that in the future, obviously right now there isn't, but that doesn't say, I think it's almost a 100% guarantee that this, that a device to do that, to test those levels is gonna come out. It's just a matter of time, really, because as the market demands it.
Yep. And especially states like Colorado and states like Washington have implemented like mandatory or maximum THC levels that can be present in marijuana products, especially edible marijuana products. So I think if you're worried about like the amount of THC, I think that'll be something that's controlled.
Yeah, I think there are like pros and cons to the passing, because obviously it's going to bring in a lot of like tax revenue for Massachusetts, and it'll probably also help with the like prison. There'll be less arrests for marijuana if you take all those like drug arrests away. But also there probably will be more incidents of like driving under, high driving.
It would also reduce the amount of people who are arrested if we legalized, say, murder, but there are obvious reasons why we don't do that.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot less people who are arrested for murder than people arrested
Yeah.
for marijuana.
And
I
also,
was just bringing up an example.
Yeah, you can
First
actually
thing
be
that
and
comes
for
to
like
also-
a really long time for just possessing like a small amount of marijuana.
Yeah.
well, this is just my personal view. I believe that you shouldn't be arrested for doing anything to yourself. I think the only way that you could be arrested is if you infringe on someone else's rights, which obviously murder is. But I don't see marijuana
The
as
marijuana thing is you then go drive and then you end up killing
Yeah,
someone.
then that person should be arrested.
And
there-
secondhand
I think
smoke.
we should have strict consequences for doing that. I think we're a little bit lax now, but I think that just because the possibility of someone doing that doesn't mean that it should be restricted for the majority of people who aren't going to do that.
The reason that laws and punishments exist are not as much to punish people to break the law, but to make sure that the law isn't broken, that people can go on living their lives without this happening. If we have no way to punish someone for doing this until someone gets hurt, until the crash happens, until there's a fatality.
That's
It's
called freedom.
it's
People
preventative law enforcement.
People were getting high well before we legalized marijuana. If the point of the law is to make sure it's not broken beforehand, I think we've certainly failed at that. And I think it's time for a new approach.
That is very true.
It'd be
The
like
winner of the
trying to
war
ban
on
cigarettes.
drugs.
Yeah, drugs wins always.
Don't do drugs.
And also, just saying, just because drugs are legalized, it's not like there's not going to be an equal amount of money being spent to tell people how much drugs are bad. I think you'll see a slight increase over time, but like how it is right now, it's slowly decreasing as people become more and more aware of what's going on and what they do to your body. So
That's true. California also legalized this along with Nevada.
A bunch of states have.
No, it's just Nevada
Just-
and California.
Just the two liberalist states and Nevada.
Yeah. Interesting
there
mix.
was one more.
It was on
there were
23 different
4.
ballots.
Yeah, but it was only legalized in 3.
I was legalizing for it. Oh well.
Yeah, well, maybe in the future we'll see even more radical approaches to the war on drugs, such as those we've seen in Portugal and those we've seen in Colombia.
You mean just letting it happen?
Or
Or
the
actually
Philippines.
letting the drug
Well,
lords
the
control the
Philippines
government?
has a very
there you
interesting
go.
take on the war on
The
drugs.
Philippines have a very interesting take on everything right
For those
now.
of you who don't follow international politics, the new Filipino president, Rodrigo Duterte, has come out and he has sanctioned the extra-legal killings of drug dealers and drug addicts.
They call him the Punisher.
The Punisher, yes.
Hasn't he also decided to break ties with the United States and
He
go and
has
work with
decided
China?
to
Well,
break ties with the United
He
States.
said he is going to.
But he has some really unconventional
Yeah.
Yes,
methods.
for
I
example.
think the U.S. is moving towards Portugal and towards other countries like that.
Criminals have begun turning themselves in the Philippines and being gunned down anyways.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Masked gunmen enter homes.
Well, I'm not talking about being gunned down. I'm talking about turning themselves in.
Allegedly.
That seems more of a Duterteism than a fact. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if any states decide that they're going to decriminalize the possession of heroin and
They will,
focus
I
most of
doubt
their-
that will
I
ever
don't
happen.
think that'll happen.
focus most of their energy on treatment rather than punishment.
That's not going to happen. I think it'll move towards if you turn yourself in, they'll treat you, but they won't.
About
And
a
they
year
won't
ago,
arrest
we
you. They're
thought
not
the
gonna
Trump
legalize it.
presidency was not going to happen.
That is also true.
About 2
I
weeks
would
ago,
say
we thought
everyone
the
at
Trump
this
presidency
table.
wasn't
Yeah.
gonna happen.
So
He's
the,
revenged
the,
on a lot
mor-
of
the
his
moral
policies.
here
Yeah, he's
is
actually
that
gone back on a lot of
all
different
the
things.
stupidest
He went
things
back
that
on
we
the
could
wall.
He went
possibly
back on the
do,
wall.
we
He went back on
sometimes do
Obamacare.
them.
Was back on.
What about his alt-right, the people he's picked for his...
Breitbart?
Yeah,
Oh,
him.
yeah,
Oh,
Steve
that's
Steve
scary.
Bannon.
Steve Bannon.
I don't think
Yeah.
Bannon's actually been given a real position yet.
When he wants to give his children real position?
No, they're
No,
Not
they're
allowed
not.
to
No,
do
they're
that.
not.
You can't do
they're
that.
they're going to be heading up the Trump
Yeah, they're-
organization.
Well, I thought I wanted to give them, like,
No.
clearance for all the...
No,
Secret
no.
He's
they're
not
gonna run
allowed
the
to.
business.
They're the executives of Trump.
Not yet.
The president,
Marcus,
the
Marcus,
president,
Hey,
Hey,
saying
a
stuff.
year ago we
Marcus,
thought we
you're
didn't
saying-
think Trump was going to win. You never know at this
I
point.
thought he
I don't
was
think
gonna
Trump
win.
thought he was going to win.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
Trump
he
thought he was
didn't.
going to win even an election.
No,
night.
he told Chris Christie that in October of last year that he was going to back out of the race if he lost anything and just support the governor.
Yeah. Well,
The other thing happened though.
Well, like 3 months into his campaign, like a year and a half ago, his campaign staffer like quit, and they were like, "This has gone too far. Like this was just a publicity stunt. I don't actually like the vein of politics we're hitting." And then they quit, and then he
now
just
he's the
kept going,
president.
and now he's the president. It's just like
Elect. it's mad.
President
this is just a
elect
prank.
Donald Trump.
I feel like
Publicity's
on
gone wrong.
inauguration day he'll be like, "I'm gonna put my hand on the Bible." Never mind, I was doing this as a
procession
prank.
has-
I'm leaving now.
the
procession
You're on your own.
avenue-
Okay.
Don't buy Trump products.
the, pre-
I think you guys are taking this a bit too far.
the procession avenue
I think-
usually
I think
goes
there's a
to
little bit of salt in this room, as it were.
Well, if
I
you're a
think
business.
I think that Trump is getting co-opted by the likes of Rance Priebus and
Yeah.
What he's doing is he's
After the
setting up
inauguration,
Mike
the
Pence's.
procession goes straight to the White House, and, well, Trump's new hotel is directly on the route.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
I think what he's doing is setting up Mike Pence's
just-
cabinet and the advisors he wants, so he can just like leave halfway through his term.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's actually gonna make like any decisions.
No,
I
it's
think
all
that,
Mike
like,
Pence.
I'd even
I think that there's just gonna be like a
Donald
there's gonna be,
Trump
like
to Mike
it's gonna be like a
Pence.
Hillary style
yes.
like focus group thing where like everyone else decides
It's
his
gonna-
decisions for him.
It's gonna be a combat, or it's gonna be like a battle between Mike Pence and Paul Ryan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Who just
I-
got-
I
who
would
just got
disagree.
reelected
I think
as
I think-
Speaker of the House.
either that or Trump is going to become the overly become overly productive in the decision making and want to be involved in everything, even the
I
most
don't see
minor.
that
Unrolled
happening.
You mean
foreign policy.
I
like
don't see him doing
people
that.
said
That's
was
the only
going
thing
to
he
happen
He's already gone
after
back.
the
He's already gone
primary?
back
He's gone
on
back
some of
on
his
how
most
many
major claims.
Yeah, the wall. He's like, oh, we'll just put a fence up.
Yeah, he's like, oh, offensive.
Which is already
Okay, no, that's
And then he's like, oh yeah, we'll keep Obamacare.
We'll make a bigly change that
Yeah.
won't do anything.
No, he's not.
Funny
gonna
thing
make a
is,
big
Trump's
change.
while Trump's walking out the wall, the Mexican president is trying to keep hold.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
Mexican
wants the wall
peso
now.
not doing well.
Oh.
Stock market doing very well.
Peso.
Be
No.
interesting. 4 years of Trump presidency.
Maybe
Two,
Um,
and then 2 years with Mike Pence.
full.
Another, yeah.
One could
Another
say
half year with.
John's thinking eight years over here.
Oh, John's thinking 8 years. Well, at least 4 years.
I think if he can pull off like what Reagan did, where he came in with the really low approval rating, but then if he does something
Then get
major,
shot.
well,
Like Reagan did?
yeah, that.
Yeah.
But something happens where, let's say he
Screwing
does
you.
get a major policy thing in, like he passes, he repeals and replaces Obamacare,
I can see that.
but and it works better than Obamacare, then he could claim it's a success, and
true.
then
Well, that's
he
if it
can't
worked. If
make
it doesn't,
that
then
happen,
Like,
it's
I'm
who's
screwed.
running
surprised.
against him? Like in 4 years from now, like who would run against him?
I
Anyone.
don't know. Bernie
Bernie?
Sanders is running for Senate Minority Leader.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Or at least there's
Full-time.
talk of him running.
He's
Yeah.
he's old.
I'm not sure if he's actually officially put his name in.
Who would run against
Who
Trump?
would run again?
Yeah.
Elizabeth
I mean-
Warren, I heard,
Oh,
might
no.
throw.
I
Yeah,
doubt
no.
it.
It's too early.
I think
Candidate.
Well, I don't think anyone
I
saw
think right
Bernie
now the
Sanders
Democrats
coming
have the-
before he announced his
Elizabeth Warren's
run.
like
So
a less
they always
likable
could
Hillary
be.
Clinton, and Hillary Clinton's already a less likable Obama.
I think if
I think Warren's a bit more
Can we get
likable than
Michelle
Clinton.
Mm.
Michelle Obama?
Much
anyone?
more than Clinton.
Michelle Obama says
Michelle
she
Obama.
doesn't want to run.
She was
Who
the
knows?
only truly inspiring person in this race.
Kanye, 2020. He said he's running.
Well, there's going to be a huge power struggle in the Democratic Party, but that's all the time we have. So, thanks for tuning in to Cohasset Political Society's Open Forum. I'm Abby Tierney, and see you later.